80 to 90% of the people I've helped buy a home have ended up going over their original budget for buying a home. So some people might say, well, what's the point of having a budget in the first place if you're likely gonna end up going over your budget? Well, if you don't have a budget, then you have no idea of knowing what you can or can't afford. And there's some specific steps and ways to create a budget that can help you from going over it in the first place. So what I'm gonna be doing in this video is covering the 5 steps of creating a budget for buying a home and why they're important. First off, this video is step 3 in the home buying process. I've got a whole series of videos I'm creating. We also have our home buyer guide, which is in a link in the description below. So if you want that, it's basically a summary of everything I'm covering here. Now, the very first step in creating a budget to buy a home is knowing what you actually qualify for. Now, I'll be covering this more in future videos, talking about getting pre-qualified and working with a lender. But the main thing to know is it's possible that you might actually be willing and able to spend more on a monthly budget for a home than a lender's actually gonna say you qualify for. Most people will qualify for more than they're actually willing to spend. So that's really why it's important to go over this video and talk about the budget. So the second step is knowing what your down payment is and what your closing costs are. Now, the reason this is important is down payment directly affects what your monthly payment is. For example, if you have a 5% down payment on a $500,000 home, you're gonna be spending a lot more per month than if you have a 50% down payment on a $500,000 home. It's just kind of common sense, but it's important to know what that is. So once you know what your down payment is, then you can establish what your monthly budget will be based on purchase price. Now, this is something you can work on both with a lender and a real estate agent, but setting up what you're able to afford and setting that as a savings goal is the first step. Now, we covered that in video 1 about start saving, and that really is a part of creating your budget, is knowing what that number is. So step 3 is kind of a continuation of that idea. Now, if you've been saving on a regular basis, saying, okay, we've got to save $30,000 or $40,000, whatever your number is, saying, okay, we're putting this into savings every single month. And that's essentially practice for making your monthly mortgage payments. So if you're practicing putting $2,000 into a savings account, well, then you can just continue doing that instead of putting it into your savings account. That money's just gonna go to your mortgage. So being able to do that will essentially prove to you that you're able to make those payments and will help you know what your comfort level is. Step 4 is probably one of the more important steps because it's knowing what all the expenses involved are. Looking on online mortgage calculators, sometimes they'll just say what the mortgage and interest is, but there's more to it than that. You have to pay, yes, your principal, your interest, but there's also insurance, which is mortgage insurance if you're paying less than 20% down. There's insurance, which is just like the property casualty insurance. And then there's also property taxes. So principal, interest, taxes, insurance, that's PITI, that's an acronym that's used. So you have to know what that whole amount is. But on top of that, there also might be HOA dues, there might be utilities that you're not paying for if you're renting right now, and there might be other home maintenance expenses that you have to budget for. So knowing what the whole picture is really important. By the way, a quick note on many of these online mortgage calculators is many of them assume a 20% down payment. They may also assume the interest rate that goes along with the 20% down payment. So if you're using an online calculator, make sure you're adjusting it and customizing it to your actual situation. Otherwise, they may say a certain home price, they'll estimate what the monthly payment is, and it's not accurate. So go through on the additional details or advanced details, however it's phrased, and make sure you're changing that so that it's accurate. So the first 4 steps are really kind of the unchangeable things. 1, what you're qualified for. 2, what your down payment is. Step 3, how much you can physically save. And then step 4, knowing what all the costs are. Now, step 5 is something that's potentially unique or maybe something you haven't really done before, and that's establishing your values. The reason most people go over their original budget is because they have a conflict in values. One value is not spending very much money on buying a home, but the second value is the quality of life. For example, someone goes and they look inside a $500,000 home, and it's got most of the things they want, but not everything. And they realize that maybe for another $50,000, they might be able to have something that really is important to them, that's central to their values, maybe about hosting or having family come and stay or something along those lines. Now, that extra $50,000 in purchase price is gonna probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $250 a month. Now, where there's a conflict in values is they say, okay, we really only want to spend this much, but this is something we really value as a family or as an individual or whoever's buying a home. So then why it's important to know what your values are is because your budget is a complete range of things from housing to food to utilities to entertainment. And you have to know which values are more important. If hosting friends and family is more important to you than going and seeing movies or doing other outings or spending money in other areas, you may allocate some of that part of your budget to your new home buying budget. So all of these work together. Your whole budget, not just for buying a home, but your whole budget has to be based on your values and what is most important to you. When you do that and when you're clear on your values, then you can set and create an accurate budget that's something you can really stick to. Sometimes this isn't really possible until you've actually been in some homes and have seen what's important to you and what's not. Sometimes you think you can live with something and then you go inside a home and realize you can't. So those are the 5 steps to creating your budget. Hope this has been helpful. If you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe and make sure you're not missing the new ones as they come out. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.